Hey everyone, it's Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. This is another comic book thoughts video, maybe a bit truncated, although I always think I'm going to be go quick and don't always. But this past Wednesday when I went to the shop, there were only three comic books on my pull, although Savage Dragon should have been there. It wasn't. So I picked up three other comics. So I picked up a total of six comics, which is small for me. And then I've read a few other relatively new comics that I'll talk about here. But unfortunately, I think there was nothing that I was super excited about in the end. So I read Cruel Universe, which keeps having these fantastic Greg Smallwood covers. And each story in it had kind of an interesting idea, like a Elon Musk-like person creates self-driving vehicles based on his own personality, and they end up killing everyone in the world. That might be more making Elon worse than he should be, but anyway, it was kind of a the cars had his aggressive personality. Not saying that he had a murderous personality, and of course, things don't end well for him either. And then we had a weird story that didn't really make too much sense to me of people taking over a boat carrying some kind of toxic chemical and dumping all the chemicals in the water. Maybe it was intended to be some kind of environmental message, but didn't really tell much. And a story of a man erasing his identity on the internet, only it's more than he bargained for. Uh, and then a story of a future where artificial angels that follow people around, telling them how to behave properly. I thought that was a really cool concept, and the art's kind of interesting here, although the coloring kind of doesn't work all the time. But of course, these artificial angels go wrong. Um, so I guess we had a series of stories of technology going wrong and biting people in the butt. So fear of technology, that could be an interesting vein to mine, but somehow it just didn't work. And they're selling Cruel Universe with these, intense sci-fi images on the cover, but in the actual stories they back off being too science fictional, like going too deep into the realms of science fiction, which is unfortunate. Since I didn't have other stuff to buy, there was this cool Spawn cover. Um, I hear people still saying good things about Spawn, and it was pretty good. I did not feel connected to the story because I have not been reading much Spawn. Um, so I had this sense of like stuff just keeps happening in the Spawn world, and this is just another set of events in a way. So, uh, other readers may have a connection to what's going on with the characters and everything else. But not bad art, interesting story. Also, it felt like just a teeny bit per issue, judging by this one issue. But still, it's not too bad. So I was real excited for Hyde Street because I've been loving all of the Ghost Machine books that I've been reading. This one is Jeff Johns again, doing almost all the Ghost Machine books, and Ivan Rice. And I is there two Rices? Um, I think this is the one that was on Aquaman way back when with Jeff Johns scripting back in the New 52, but I'm not sure. But anyway, and maybe, connecting to why that Cruel Universe didn't work for me. Horror is a delicate thing. Like, excuse me, I'm gonna close the window. Horror is a delicate thing, like, whether you like poetry or not, a given poem, it just either works for you, or it doesn't. And horror feels that way to me. Like either the horror clicks for you or it just completely misses. And so I could see what they're doing here. There's this street, and there's sort of certain people who are trapped on the street and make horrible things happen to people who arrive on the street. And I don't know. And it feels like it's maybe a street somewhere in New York City. I don't know if they say that or not. But ultimately, it didn't click for me. It was a little bit in the art, um, and a little bit like the art almost, I don't know. There was something about the art that would distract me from the feeling of being in a horror story. But the main thing was, I think, just in the writing itself. But this is just, he's just setting up this concept. So I may dip into some more Hyde Street to see where it goes, whether I get into the groove with it once it gets in its full stride. Like I feel like this is the beginning attempts, and I don't know if Jeff Johns, who's a great superhero writer, has delved into horror before. I guess he may have like brought quite a bit of horror into some of his superhero comics, like with Green Lantern and such. And then these two are kind of a pair. The All In special, and Conan Battle for the Black Stone, in that they're both event comics. This is sort of trying to set up two events in a way, or maybe set up a new universe plus an event. I'm not sure. It's kind of cool that it's a flip book. And on one side, we've got the incredible work of Wes Craig. Um, but this script does not deserve Wes Craig, in my opinion. Uh, it's the Wes Craig side reads much better just because he is the right artist if you want to do some apocalypse, new gods kind of stuff, focusing on Darkseid. It's a really good choice for an artist. And incredible colors. Who did the colors on this? Mike Spicer. And yeah, so that made it really fun to read. But the basic concept that it it's to make this event happen, things just seem to happen. Like Darkseid, I don't want to spoil too much, but Darkseid is looking for a certain person. Why he's looking for that person and what led him to that or anything, maybe that was in previous issues, in somewhere at DC. But in this, it just seemed like kind of a random thing, just to make things happen. Um, and all of this sets up a new universe, the Absolute Universe, which well, so my criticism of all of this would involve spoiling all of that. So I think I will just say that it felt kind of random to me, and it was just changing things just so that they could have this new universe, but the reasons why it should exist seemed non-existent to me. And then in the other half, you have your more traditional DC superhero looking kind of thing, drawn by Daniel Sampere, and it looks kind of nice, but it the situations seem forced, like they always do in events, and then the actual big battles seem impactless to me. You get to see tons of superheroes standing around, which I guess as a kid I would have loved. Um, but they fight Darkseid. This version of Darkseid looking very different. Darkseid now is missing a hand and has an axe instead. But even the fight, you don't feel any connection. Like you see all these people going forward and you see Darkseid hit the ground with his axe. I don't know. It just doesn't connect for me as a it looks pretty, but when I'm actually reading it, I don't feel like I get much out of it in terms of even like a superhero fight. So, I don't know. It was kind of fun to pick this up, and they did not make it too expensive, but it's just another event. And I'm starting in this issue of Conan and the Black Stone, it felt just another event-ish to me. Now the art's really cool, and I still am very interested in all these Robert E. Howard characters. And Jim Zub has surprised me before and pulled things off that I didn't think he could pull off. So maybe he can still make this event something different than just your average event where you gather together a bunch of superheroes for some vague reason, and then you vaguely have them solve the problem. But hopefully there'll be more to it than that. There was Eric on Nine Panel Grid was saying he's looking forward to this having like a permanent event on the Conan world. And that also makes me nervous because I like the Conan world the way it is, the way Robert E. Howard created it. I don't need it to be changed, but we'll see. We'll see. This is number 2. I think, is this a 4-issue or 5-issue event series? So Jim Zub could still pull it out. I enjoyed Redcoat a lot, and this is the end of the first arc, and it was quite satisfying. The journey's always a little more fun than the end, but I still enjoyed the end quite a bit. And there's no letting up in the Brian Hitch. Brian Hitch artwork is still just as good 6 issues in as it was the first issue and the preview, the 0 issue or whatever it was. And Jeff Johns here, even though this is maybe different than a superhero comic that he's best known for, he's really in the groove here too, in my opinion. So whatever, horror and humor, this is more of a humor book. It can click or not click with you, and this is really clicking with me, and I have come to really care about our 2 main characters here on the cover. So I hope, I'm kind of guessing that maybe each arc will take place in a different historical period. So maybe not Sigmund Freud, Albert Einstein, the Albert Einstein of this world where certain magics are real, will show up again. Maybe even in the next arc, who knows? So then I caught up with 3 issues. I only have 2 here, but I caught up with my Uncanny Valley reading, which I got behind on. And this is a lot of fun. And it continues that way issue by issue. Each issue is a really quick read. I think this would be an ideal candidate for reading in the trades. It's, the art, talk about artwork that does not let up. It's still really great. What is it, 5 issues in? There are little things where little comic book fudges, I'd call them, where some of the people who were chasing them turned out to have the same goal. We finally find out as the main character's grandfather, Pecos Pete. So that didn't really make sense when I thought about it, but it still made for a fun ride. And there's this idea of the using paint, white paint, to erase characters. We've had a lot of white paint thrown around, but nobody actually erased yet, although that could be coming. I wouldn't be surprised if the grandfather gets erased, or at least some of the villains. Anyway, kind of a cool comic, and kind of, I mean, the mixing of the real world and a cartoon world has happened before, but somehow this just feels like a fresher take on it, the Uncanny Valley. And then I read the first of the Batman, The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween series. I have not read The Long Halloween, which is terrible of me, because it's so long. I just have never got around to it. And I guess I wasn't reading much DC Comics at the time it came out. And unfortunately, the original artist, Tim Sale, who did this cover, is not alive to draw this. And I think that every issue is going to be by a different artist. I picked this, I didn't realize that when I picked this up, but I picked this up for the Edward Riso art, which is very satisfying. And it feels like a good kind of intense Batman story. I have no idea if it lives up to the original Long Halloween, which is so revered that I imagine it won't live up to it. How can you revisit a masterpiece, like revisiting The Watchmen or whatever? It's only gonna be so good. But I'm not sure who the next artist is on it. It's in the back of my head. I saw who was drawing issue 2. But anyway, it was a lot of fun seeing this not Catwoman art. There is Catwoman there, and Catwoman's drawn wonderfully. So is Robin. Love images like that with the shadow of Batman. Edward Riso does fantastic jobs with shadows. He's in the realm of Mike Mignola and probably Tim Sale, I guess, but he's got his own style. And any Edward Riso comic is always worth a pickup for me. And like I said, it's a decent Batman story. Who did the colors? Because the color, Dave Stewart. The colors really rock. So this was, except for the fact that I keep thinking I don't want to read any more Batman. This was a great read, or a super fun read. I wouldn't call it. I can't tell yet if it's a great storyline or anything like that. But immediately when they keep reminding you it's a return to a previous storyline about Holiday killing off people. Um, so anyway, fun to read. So I was glad to read that. I've been reading a lot of comics on DC Universe Unlimited, or whatever, the DC Universe Infinite, the app, with my daughter. We read the entire run of Grant Morrison's Superman from the New 52, which goes so off the rails. It's kind of amazing to just see how far off the rails it goes. Um, I think I've heard about things about like Grant Morrison scripts coming in a page or two at a time. And that's the only way to explain how an editor didn't say, hey, none of this makes sense. You can sort of see by the end some of the sense that Grant Morrison was trying to make, but it is a lot of work to try to connect all those pieces. It's, yeah. And it's maybe the beginning of the end of Grant Morrison as a top level writer in superhero comics. Because he was so dominant that they made a documentary movie about him. And my daughter and I watched the beginning of the documentary where they say, he's the rock star, absolute most famous writer of his generation. But that movie came out as the New 52 was coming out, and Grant Morrison was already kind of in his downward slide. You don't stay at the top in something like comics for very long, I don't think. And it's dangerous to make these declarations. People could at some point make the same declarations about Brian Michael Bendis, and these writers should not believe their own hype. It's always ephemeral, this kind of fame, I think. Well, except for Alan Moore and Jack Kirby, maybe, and maybe Will Eisner. Maybe. Okay, guys. Thank you for tuning in with me, and I'll be back soon.